And it was told, Behold, the king weepeth and mourneth for Absalom. And the victory that day was turned into mourning unto all the people. For the people heard say that day how the king was grieved for his son. And the people gat them by stealth that day into the city, as people being ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son. And Joab came into the house to the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the faces of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life and the lives of thy sons and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives and the lives of thy concubines, in that thou lovest thine enemies and hatest thy friends. For thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived, and all we had died that day, then it had pleased thee well. Now therefore arise, go forth, and speak comfortably unto thy servants. For I swear by the Lord, if thou go not forth, there will not tarry one with thee this night, and that will be worse unto thee than all the evil that befell thee from thy youth until now. Then the king arose and sat in the gate. And they told unto all the people, saying, Behold, the king doth sit in the gate. And all the people came before the king, for Israel had fled every man to his tent. And all the people were at strife throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, The king saved us out of the hand of our enemies, and he delivered us out of the hand of the Philistines. And now he is fled out of the land for Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why speak ye not a word of bringing the king back? And King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar the priest, saying, Speak unto the elders of Judah, saying, Why are ye the last to bring the king back to his house, seeing the speech of all Israel is come to the king, even to his house? Ye are my brethren, ye are my bones and my flesh. Wherefore then are ye the last to bring back the king? And say ye to Amasa, Art thou not of my bone and of my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if thou be not captain of the host before me continually in the room of Joab. And he bowed the heart of all the men of Judah, even as the heart of one man, so that they sent this word unto the king, Return thou and all thy servants. So the king returned and came to Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to conduct the king over Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Jerah, a Benjamite, which was of Bahurim, hasted and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. And there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with them, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants with him, and they went over Jordan before the king. And there went over a ferry boat to carry over the king's household, and to do what he thought good. And Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was come over Jordan, and said unto the king, Let not my lord impute iniquity unto me, neither do thou remember that which thy servant did perversely the day that my lord the king went out of Jerusalem, that the king should take it to his heart. For thy servant doth know that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I am come the first this day of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king. And Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, Shall not Shimei but be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? And David said, What have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah, that ye should this day be adversaries unto me? Shall there any man be put to death this day in Israel? For do not I know that I am this day king over Israel? Therefore the king said unto Shimei, Thou shalt not die. And the king swore unto him. And Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and had neither dressed his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he came again in peace. And it came to pass, when he was come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said unto him, Wherefore wentest not thou with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For thy servant said, I will saddle me an ass, that I may ride thereon, and go to the king, because thy servant is lame. And he hath slandered thy servant unto my lord the king, but my lord the king is as an angel of God. Do therefore what is good in thine eyes. For all of my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king, yet didst thou set thy servant among them that did eat at thine own table? What right therefore have I yet to cry any more unto the king? And the king said unto him, Why speakest thou any more of thy matters? I have said, Thou and Ziba divide the land. And Mephibosheth said unto the king, Yea, let him take all, forasmuch as my lord the king is come again in peace unto his own house. And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rajalim, and went over Jordan with the king to conduct him over Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, even fourscore years old, and he had provided the king of the sustenance while he lay at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. And the king said unto Barzillai, Come thou over with me, and I will feed with me in Jerusalem. And Barzillai said unto the king, How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king unto Jerusalem? I am this day fourscore years old, and can I discern between good and evil? Can thy servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any more the voice of singing men and singing women? Wherefore then should thy servant be yet a burden unto my lord the king? Thy servant will go a little way over Jordan with the king, and why should the king recompense it me with such a reward? Let thy servant, I pray thee, turn back again, that I may die in mine own city, and be buried by the grave of my father and of my mother. But behold thy servant Shimham, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him what shall seem good unto thee. And the king answered, Shimham shall go over with me, and I will do to him that which shall seem good unto thee, and whatsoever thou shalt require of me, that will I do for thee. And all the people went over Jordan. And when the king was come over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned unto his own place. Then the king went on to Gilgal, and Shimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah conducted the king, and also half the people of Israel. And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said unto the king, Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen thee away, and have brought the king and his household and all David's men with him over Jordan? And all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is near of kin to us. Wherefore then be ye angry for this matter? Have we eaten at all of the king's cost, or hath he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more right in David than ye. Why then did ye despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king? And the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. The previous chapter, 2 Samuel 18, David organizes his army into thirds for Ittai, Joab, and Abishai to lead. David and his army defeat the Israelite army under Absalom's leadership. Absalom becomes entangled into a tree while he was riding a mule, suspending him into the air. Unable to move, David's army ends his life. David mourns his son. In the current chapter, 2 Samuel 19, David reacts very badly to the loss of his son. Joab, his army captain, advises David to make an appearance and formally addresses Israel. David makes an appearance at the city gate, sends messengers to Judah, then crosses Jordan. Summarizing 2 Samuel 19, in verse 1 through 4, David is lamenting the death of his son. This is the third son that he's lost. The first one with Bathsheba, that son died in infancy. The second son, Amnon, was murdered by Absalom, who was avenging his sister because Amnon sexually assaulted her. And Absalom is the final death because once he's embraced by King David, he then convinces Israel that he should be the next leader. The previous chapter, he ended up a tree. He was riding underneath a tree with the mule, and the tree snatched him up. So David's servants killed him, and it had to be that way. They could not just let him stage a takeover. 5 through 7. Joab is saying, Look, I know this is your son. Okay, we know that your relationship wasn't that all that it was supposed to be, and you ended up having to get rid of him. But listen, the people who saved your life, you're you're kind of making it seem like you would have rather it been them die than your son who was plotting your demise. He says in verse 7, if you don't get up and address these people, you may have no one that's going to be loyal to you anymore. So, verses 8 through 14, David sits at the gate. People see him because the city gate is a public area. They all start to congregate around him and amongst themselves. This is, to me, this doesn't sound like they're saying it directly to him. They're just saying quietly, like, yeah, the king rescued us from our enemies and from the Philistines, but he fled from his own son Absalom. Also, the man that we anointed, that we wanted to be our king, he's dead. In verse 11. Now, when we get to verse 11, so verse 8 and 9, this is just talking about the king and how the people that are the kingdom people, how they're behaving right now. Now, verse 11 through 14, David is talking to his two priests because he wants to send them a message to Judah to ask them, why are they the last to welcome him home since they were the ones who anointed him to be king first? Also, tell Amasa, see, when I read the King James, Amasa is the army official that Absalom set before he died. When I read this in the King James Version, what I thought this said was David was inviting him to keep the same position, but with Joab. So Joab is David's army captain. So since Amasa is also an army captain and also Joab's relative, just work with him. But these other translations are saying Amasa, David wants Amasa to take Joab's job. Verse 14 ends that discussion that was started in verse 11. 15 to 23, David returns to Jordan. Judah met David there. And Shimei in verse 16, this is the guy who in 2 Samuel chapter 16, he just ran up to David and starts throwing dirt at him and cursing him and kicking up dust. This same guy in 2 Samuel 16, here in chapter 19, verse 16, this man is now with 1,000 men and he's begging Saul for he is begging David for forgiveness. Don't hold me guilty. Verse 21, Abishai tells, he asks David, like, should we put him to death because of how he treated you back then? David says, well, David tells the guy that you won't die. He says to Shimei, you're not going to die. And then verses 24 through 30, Mephibosheth, this is Saul's grandson. Mephibosheth appears. He's seemingly unclean. It looks like he hasn't attended to himself, trimmed his mustache, or taken care of his feet, or washed his clothes. He didn't do any of that from the day that David had to run fleeing from his kingdom. David asked him, why didn't you come with me? And Mephibosheth kind of gives him some BS answer. He says, "Oh, my servant betrayed me. He said that he was setting up a donkey for me, but he didn't. I know my servant slandered me." Verse 29, David tells him, "You and Seba are to divide the land." And verse 30, Mephibosheth says that Ziba can have all the land. So, verse 30, verse 24 through 30, that just discusses what happened with David and Mephibosheth. Now we're getting from 31 to 39. Barzillai went to King David. Barzillai is old. He helped David at one time, and he's a wealthy man. David invites him to travel to Jerusalem, but he says, "No, I'm too old, but I'll walk with you a little bit. I want to make sure that I die close to home so I can be buried where I want to be buried." Barzillai gives David Chimham, his servant, and then Barzillai goes home. That is all I have for 2 Samuel chapter 19. I love you. Have a wonderful day.